Capitol Hill was already alive with motion that morning, but inside room 417 of the Rayburn House office building, there was a steady hum of focus, the kind of quiet intensity that came only when the stakes were high, and the woman at the center of it all was Jasmine Crockett. She wasn't a celebrity politician. She didn't seek viral sound bites. But people noticed when she spoke, not because she was loud, but because she was clear, deliberate, and deeply unafraid. The office reflected her essence, shelves lined with law books and framed photos of community protests she had once led in Texas, an old courtroom sketch from her days as a public defender tucked beside a congressional plaque. Her desk bore the marks of work, not image stacks of paper color-coded notes, and a half-drunk mug of black coffee that had long since gone cold. Jasmine stood by the window reviewing a draft housing bill, her eyes scanning line by line, red pen in hand. Dressed in a cobalt blue blazer and matching pumps, her posture was relaxed but focused, a woman at peace in the eye of political complexity. Across the room, her communications director Thomas scrolled through the morning's headlines. "You're trending again," he said with a smirk. "Good trending or death threats trending," she replied dryly without looking up. "A little of both. You know how it is." She chuckled softly, flipping another page. This was normal for Jasmine. The pressure, the spotlight, the attacks, all part of the job. What mattered was the work. What mattered was the truth. She didn't grow up in a political dynasty. She didn't inherit a seat or buy influence. Jasmine Crockett fought her way up the hard way. Raised in Dallas, she knew what it felt like to be underestimated. She knew the sting of systemic bias, the burden of being the only one in the room, and the power of turning pain into purpose. Before Congress, she had walked the halls of justice in another form as a public defender. That meant late nights, terrified clients, hostile judges, and the crushing knowledge that sometimes the law didn't care about truth, only power. She learned to speak with precision, to hold her ground when it felt like the floor might give way. And she brought that same fight to the Capitol. So on that bright morning, with aides bustling, phones ringing, and Washington whirring, Jasmine didn't know that an envelope was already en route to her office. An envelope that bore the golden seal of a Manhattan law firm, a name she recognized instantly, and a message that would send shockwaves through the media, the Hill, and the Trump family alike. But she didn't know that yet. In that moment, she was just a congresswoman doing the work, focused, unshaken, dangerous only to those who feared the truth. And truth, Jasmine Crockett carried that like armor. It came in a cream-colored envelope, thick, expensive, and heavy, like bad news that had dressed up in silk to pretend it wasn't dangerous. The receptionist at Representative Crockett's office didn't think much of it when she signed for the overnight delivery. Official correspondence came through all the time: subpoenas, legislative memos, press kits. But this one had weight. Not just physical weight, but the kind that made your stomach sink without knowing why. When Jasmine returned from a morning committee briefing her chief of staff, Maya handed it to her without a word. The only sound in the room was the subtle rip as Jasmine opened the envelope. Inside, a formal letter, 4 pages. Gold-embossed header from a top-tier Manhattan law firm known for representing celebrities, corporations, and more notably, the Trump family. The title, "Cease and Desist Demand," regarding defamatory statements. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. Then she began to read. The tone was razor sharp. The letter accused her in no uncertain terms of spreading knowingly false and malicious allegations about Ivanka Trump during a recent town hall. It referenced statements Jasmine had made about conflicts of interest and abuse of influence tied to Ivanka's time in the White House. According to the letter, those statements were defamatory and harmful to Ms. Trump's public reputation. The demands were clear: a full public apology, immediate retraction from all media platforms, and a chilling warning failure to comply would result in immediate legal action, a lawsuit vigorous and public in nature. It wasn't just a letter. It was an attempt to scare her into silence. Jasmine read it once, then again. Her fingers didn't tremble. Her jaw didn't clench. But inside her, something changed. This wasn't a debate anymore. It was war, and Ivanka had just fired the first shot. For a few seconds, there was nothing. No sound, no movement, no reaction. Jasmine sat in her chair, her eyes fixed on the final line of the letter. The words blurred slightly, not from tears, but from disbelief. A lawsuit for telling the truth. She blinked, once, twice, then leaned back slowly in her chair, still holding the letter in both hands like it might explode if she dropped it. Across the room, Maya watched nervously. "You okay?" Jasmine didn't answer right away. She was still absorbing it, the accusation, the threats, the demand for silence. It wasn't just a legal letter. It was a warning shot dressed up in gold foil in legal jargon. And for the first time in a long time, Jasmine felt it, the creeping doubt. Not fear, not shame, but that quiet question that scratches at the back of every truth-teller's mind. Do they have the power to shut me up? She stood, moved to the window, and exhaled. The Capitol stretched out before her, busy, beautiful, brutal, a place where truth was currency, but also a weapon, where people smiled on camera and whispered threats behind doors. Ivanka Trump thought a letter would be enough to silence her, thought legal stationery would make her retreat. They didn't know Jasmine Crockett, because silence. That was never on the table. She turned from the window and faced Maya. Call Lena, she said quietly. Tell her we've got a situation. And just like that, the decision was made. She wouldn't apologize. She wouldn't back down. She would fight. Ivanka Trump wasn't just a daughter of a president. She was a brand, a corporation, a carefully curated image, polished in gold and protected by silence. Her public persona was that of grace, elegance, and soft-spoken charm. But those who had crossed her or tried to speak against her knew better. They knew about the machine. The one that didn't scream. It whispered, quietly, legally, ruthlessly. The empire of silence. Behind every camera-friendly smile was an army of lawyers, PR agents, and reputation consultants. A team trained to make problems vanish not through brute force, but with surgical precision. And it worked. Time and time again, individuals who criticized the Trump family, especially Ivanka, either disappeared from headlines or recanted their words. Some were served legal threats, others simply got buried in waves of doubt and discrediting stories. One journalist called it the gold-plated guillotine, another reputation assassination by elegance. Jasmine Crockett knew all of this. She's seen it from afar, how voices went quiet after brushing too close to that family. But she never thought she'd become the next target. Not until that letter arrived. And now she wasn't just facing a legal threat. She was facing a system built to silence women like her. Women who spoke boldly. Women who didn't come from legacy. Women who couldn't be bought and wouldn't back down. That's what made Jasmine dangerous. And to people like Ivanka, dangerous voices must be quieted. The moment the cease and desist letter leaked, the media machine kicked into full gear. Cable news anchors dissected every word. Podcasters debated legal intent. Twitter exploded hashtags flying from both camps like digital grenades. Was this really a lawsuit in the making? Or just political theater? Some pundits rolled their eyes, calling it just another feud between elites. Others accused Jasmine of attention-seeking. And some, mostly those insulated by privilege, saw it all as entertainment. But for women like Jasmine Crockett, it wasn't entertainment. It was a warning. Because when a powerful white woman sends legal threats to a black congresswoman for speaking about government ethics, that's not a game. That's a tactic. For many black women in public life, this wasn't new. They had seen it before in boardrooms, courtrooms, newsrooms. The pressure to be respectable, to not be too loud, to swallow anger even when disrespected. And when they didn't, there was always a price. Sometimes that price was career damage, sometimes lawsuits, and sometimes silence. Silence bought with fear. So while the headlines debated drama, Jasmine was calculating risk. Not just for herself, but for every woman watching. Because this moment wasn't about one lawsuit. It was about setting an example, making Jasmine a cautionary tale, speak out, and this could be you. But Jasmine Crockett, she wasn't built to be a warning. She was born to be a wall. The office felt colder that afternoon. Phones kept ringing, emails kept pouring in. But the air had changed heavier, like a storm was pressing against the glass. In the war room, a small meeting space Jasmine jokingly called the fire pit, her closest aides gathered in a quiet, tense circle. Thomas, the communications director, paced. Maya, her chief of staff, sat stiffly with her arms crossed. Two junior staffers stared down at the table, avoiding eye contact. No one said it out loud, but the question was clear. Do we walk this back? Thomas was the first to break the silence. Look, it's not about backing down. It's about managing risk. If you issue a short apology, nothing major, just a statement to cool things off, we might be able to kill this story in 24 hours. Maya chimed in, her voice steady but tense. This thing's spreading jazz. Fox picked it up. Daily Mail's running with it. They're already twisting your quote. If this goes legal, you'll be dragged through the mud. There was no panic in their voices. Just pressure. Real, rational, born from love and fear because they believed in her, but they also knew the cost of being right in the wrong system. Jasmine didn't interrupt. She didn't roll her eyes. She just sat there, still, silent. Her eyes were locked on the letter again, not with anger, but with clarity. The kind of clarity that didn't need to shout. Her silence filled the room louder than any outburst could. And then finally she spoke. "I don't apologize for telling the truth," she said. Calm, even, unshaken. Thomas opened his mouth, but she raised a hand gently. "I know what you're all trying to do, and I love you for it. But if I cave now even a little, they'll know they can break me with a headline." She looked around the room. If we let this go quiet, who's going to speak up next time silence returned? But now it carried respect. Her team knew the decision was made. Jasmine didn't need to look up a number. She didn't check her contacts. She dialed it from memory, like muscle reflex, like instinct. Lena Rowe. The name alone carried weight. In Washington, she wasn't just known, she was respected. Among the elite, feared. And in certain circles called a myth the attorney who had never lost a case involving political power. But to Jasmine Crockett, Lena was more than a myth. She was family forged not by blood, but by fire. They'd met a decade ago in Dallas, both fighting for indigent defendants who couldn't afford legal help. Courtrooms back then were more hostile than fair, and most days felt like war. They learned early that survival didn't come from playing nice. It came from standing ground when everyone else folded. Lena had been there when Jasmine's car was vandalized after defending a client against a wealthy developer. Jasmine had been there when Lena was nearly disbarred for exposing a corrupt judge. They didn't just practice law, they bled it. And now when Jasmine's name was on the verge of being dragged through national headlines again, she knew only one person could match Ivanka's army of lawyers. Lena didn't ask for details. When Jasmine called and said, "I've got a situation," Lena replied, "Give me 3 hours. I'm on my way." Because when women like Jasmine are under attack, women like Lena don't ask if you're okay, they come armed and ready. The door clicked shut behind Lena as she entered Jasmine's office. Rain clung to her trench coat, and her leather briefcase hit the desk with a satisfying thud. No greetings, no pleasantries. This wasn't a social call. "Show me the letter," she said flatly. Jasmine handed it over. For the next 15 minutes, the only sound in the room was the steady rustle of legal paper and the occasional sigh from Lena that said more than words ever could. She read it once straight through, then again, then line by line like a surgeon preparing for open-heart litigation. Lena tapped the second paragraph. "Here," she muttered, "they claim your statements were knowingly false, but they don't cite a single factual error, just that your comments were damaging. That's not defamation. That's hurt feelings." She flipped to the third page. In this part, they're demanding full retraction across all platforms. That includes third-party media, legally unenforceable. They're bluffing hard. Thomas, now seated nearby, leaned in. "So, it's weak, it's calculated," Lena corrected. "It's meant to look strong, but it's smoke and mirrors. Legally, it's fragile." Jasmine's eyes sharpened. "So they're counting on me to panic?" Lena nodded. "Exactly. This isn't a lawsuit. It's an intimidation campaign." And just like that, the temperature in the room shifted. What had started as a threat was now an opportunity. Jasmine sat up straighter. Lena reached into her bag and pulled out a yellow legal pad. "We're not just going to deny this," she said. "We're going to flip it." "How?" Jasmine asked. Lena smiled, the kind of smile that made prosecutors sweat. "We draft a response that not only dismantles every line, but reminds them of what discovery means if they actually sue." Jasmine nodded slowly, the fire returning to her eyes. For the first time since the letter arrived, she wasn't reacting. She was planning. And that changed everything. Lena slid her legal pad across the desk, then looked Jasmine dead in the eye. "If they actually file this lawsuit, discovery begins." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "And that means," it means, Lena said, tapping the page, "we get access. Access to documents, access to emails, access to anything Ivanka's team filed claimed contradicted or concealed, even under oath. They're accusing you of defamation," Lena continued. "But to prove that in court, they'll have to show that what you said was false, which means they have to open up their records." She leaned back and folded her arms. "That includes bank statements, business ties, government correspondences, anything related to her time in the White House." The room went still. Thomas whispered, You think they'd actually risk that? Lena smirked. They're counting on you being too afraid to find out. But Jasmine, she wasn't afraid. In fact, her mind was racing now. She remembered the emails her staff had archived months ago, flagged from watchdog groups and ethics investigators. She remembered the inconsistencies in Ivanka's financial disclosures, the unanswered questions from House oversight committees, the reports that had been ignored, but never disproven. Receipts. She had receipts. Lena saw the spark in Jasmine's eyes. You got something, don't you? Jasmine nodded slowly. Let's just say if they want to bring this into a courtroom, they better be ready to see some sunlight. It was no longer just about defending herself. It was about truth, about shining a light where shadows had been allowed to grow unchecked. And this time, Jasmine wouldn't just endure the fight. She would control it. It started with a single tweet. Then two, then a clip from C-SPAN was edited and remixed on TikTok, racking up 1.2 million views in under 3 hours. The cease and desist letter, or at least parts of it, had leaked. Someone had slipped it to the press, and now America was watching. CNN led with the headline, Ivanka threatens lawsuit, Congresswoman refuses to back down. Fox News countered with, Jasmine Crockett defames Trump family hides behind identity politics. MSNBC The Hill. The New York Times, even BuzzFeed, everyone had a take. Podcasts debated legality, YouTube creators dissected body language. TikTok flooded with split-screen duets, half Jasmine's voice, half Ivanka's picture, and 1,000 screaming opinions. Some saw Jasmine as a hero standing tall against the machinery of privilege. Others painted her as reckless, provoking a legal storm for political points. The country split down the middle. Jasmine couldn't walk 10 steps outside the Capitol without someone filming. Her inbox exploded with hate, with praise, with threats, and offers of support. And through it all, she remained silent. Not because she didn't have something to say, but because timing was everything. Lena warned her, the public storm, it's loud, but it's not the trial. The real court is still ahead. Let them scream, we stay focused. But even Jasmine, seasoned in politics, couldn't deny one thing. This wasn't just about Ivanka anymore. This was about every woman who'd ever been silenced, every person told to know their place, and millions were watching to see how far Jasmine would go. The rotunda outside the Capitol was packed. Cameras, journalists, supporters, protesters, and at the center of it all, Jasmine Crockett. She didn't stand behind a podium. She didn't need a teleprompter. She stood in front of a row of microphones, the sun gleaming off the dome behind her, and let her voice do the work. Some of you expected me to apologize, she began. Her voice was calm, measured, but no one missed the fire behind it. You expected me to retract what I said about Ms. Ivanka Trump, to lower my head, to protect their legacy, to protect their brand, to protect their power. She took one small step forward. Her voice rose not in volume, but in conviction. But I will not apologize for telling the truth. Silence. Then a wave of noise. Applause, cheers, shouts, even sobs. The clip of that sentence, just 7 words, was shared over 13 million times in 24 hours. TikTokers stitched it over footage of women standing up to abusers. Veterans commented about being silenced for whistleblowing. Even celebrities shared the line from Viola Davis to Mark Ruffalo. Jasmine Crockett had gone from trending to iconic. She ended her speech with no script, just her heart. I stand here not as a victim, but as a voice for every person who's ever been told you're too loud, you're too angry, or you're too black to matter. I matter, we matter, and we're done being silent. The crowd didn't just cheer, they roared. At 6:47 a.m., just before sunrise, the letter hit the inboxes of Ivanka Trump's legal team and every major newsroom in Washington. It was signed by Lena Rowe. 6 pages, no shouting, no threats, just ice. The opening line alone sent shivers down the spine of anyone who understood law. We welcome your client's willingness to proceed with litigation. Our team is fully prepared for the discovery process and the public scrutiny that accompanies it. No hysteria, no public press conference. Just a letter quietly delivered and absolutely devastating. On page 3, Lena listed 11 categories of evidence their team would require if litigation proceeded. Internal communications, business records, foreign dealings during White House tenure, private memos from Ivanka's time advising her father, personal emails contradicting official statements. By page 5, Lena had made it clear, should your client prefer to withdraw the cease and desist and issue an apology for her attempts to intimidate an elected official. We are open to resolving this matter amicably. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation to avoid mutual destruction. And suddenly the media narrative shifted. While morning shows had debated Jasmine's speech, now the headlines changed. Ivanka's legal threat, backfires, discovery looms. Crockett's legal team fires back with precision strike. Ivanka goes silent as public backs Jasmine. By 3 p.m., reporters outside Ivanka's Manhattan office couldn't get a word. No comment, no posts, not even a smile. The silence was deafening. And on social media, the tide had turned. Hashtags like "We Stand with Jasmine" and "Truth is not defamation" began trending globally. Even moderate voices who had once called for de-escalation now demanded transparency from the Trump side. The legal fight wasn't over. But the energy had shifted. In a dimly lit war room beneath a D.C. law office, Lena Rose stood before a whiteboard that looked more like a crime scene investigation than a legal case. Sticky notes, printouts, old financial filings, clips from Ivanka's public appearances, and a single phrase circled in red. If they sue, they bleed. The Trump empire had always been built on confidence and control, but confidence falters under cross-examination, and control it evaporates in court. Lena knew the game. She wasn't looking for scandalous headlines, she was looking for contradictions. And she found them. 2019, congressional testimony. Ivanka stated under oath she had no involvement in specific Trump Organization real estate negotiations in foreign countries. But an internal calendar leaked by a former aide showed she personally joined 2 phone calls regarding property in Azerbaijan and the Dominican Republic. 2020 campaign interview. Ivanka claims she never profited personally from White House initiatives, but tax filings from a consulting firm she co-owned revealed 6-figure payments linked to COVID response contracts. 2017 email leak. She denied knowledge of her father's ties to a shadow LLC used for hush money payments. But one email showed her forwarding bank wire instructions with subject line "For Dad," urgent. Each piece alone circumstantial, together devastating, and Lena wasn't leaking them. She was cataloging them, preparing piece by piece for the possibility of court. Because in litigation, there's one rule: you can't hide from discovery. And if Ivanka stepped into a courtroom, she would be asked under oath to explain each one. That's when cracks began to show. Sources close to Ivanka's legal team told Politico there is concern about exposure. Real concern. They weren't just worried about Jasmine. They were terrified of what else might surface. At the top floor of Trump Tower, behind soundproof glass and under the weight of decades-old paintings and gold fixtures, the mood had changed. No more smug laughs, no more confident, well-crushed her swagger. Just silence and whispers. Ivanka sat at the end of a long mahogany conference table, staring down at her phone, as 4 of her closest legal advisors argued not with the media, but with each other. One, a former White House ethics lawyer, slammed a file shut. "This is a PR trap. We walk into court, we give them everything. Texts, memos, the damn family group chat." Another, a combative media strategist, disagreed. "Backing down makes us look guilty. We can't let a sitting congresswoman call us out and then just disappear." A third advisor, older, calmer, but visibly tense, leaned forward. "Look, this isn't just optics anymore. If we go forward with this, we're lighting a fuse on a powder keg we cannot contain." The word powder keg landed like a grenade in the room, because everyone knew what it meant. The Trump brand was more than politics. It was licensing deals, real estate empires, future campaigns, books, TV shows, global connections, and lawsuits, especially ones involving discovery, don't play by brand rules. Ivanka finally spoke, quiet, controlled. "Are we saying we can't win?" The silence that followed wasn't just an answer. It was a confirmation. Not because they weren't powerful, but because discovery makes everyone equal. And if this went to court, Jasmine's team wouldn't need to scream. They would only need to ask. The attacks came quietly but relentlessly. Late-night calls from unlisted numbers. Anonymous messages sent to Jasmine's office inbox. "You don't know who you're messing with. For your sake, let this go." Then came the tabloids. Clickbait headlines, doctored photos, a leaked rumor that she once accepted dark money from a left-wing PAC. Of course, there was no evidence, just noise. But that was the point. They didn't need to prove she was guilty. They just wanted her to feel unsafe, alone, doubted. But Jasmine Crockett, she didn't flinch. On the 3rd night after the cease and desist letter went public, Jasmine walked into a crowded town hall meeting in Dallas, Texas. There were protesters outside, microphones inside, and tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. She smiled. She stepped onto the podium flanked by local activists and ministers, and then she spoke not with fear, not with caution, but with fire. I've received your letters. I've read your threats. I've seen your lies in the press. But let me be very clear. The truth has never feared anyone, and it sure as hell doesn't fear the Trumps. Gasps in the room, reporters typing furiously. People in the crowd stood up, clapping, cheering, some crying. Because in that moment, Jasmine wasn't just fighting for herself. She was standing up for every woman who'd been told to watch her mouth, for every black leader who'd been punished for speaking truth, for every person who ever looked at power and said no. The line between fear and courage, Jasmine had stepped over it, and she was not stepping back. It came on a rainy Thursday morning. No press conference, no spokesperson, just an email. Plain, dry, deceptively simple. It was addressed to Jasmine Crockett's legal team, the sender, Ivanka, Trump's attorney. The subject line read, "Cease and desist status update." And the body of the message, "At this time, our client has elected not to pursue further legal action in this matter. We consider this issue resolved." That was it. No apology, no clarification, no explanation for the sudden reversal. But everyone knew what it meant. Behind those few sterile lines of text was an entire empire retreating. Behind that email was fear of exposure, of discovery, of a fight they couldn't control. Jasmine sat in her office holding the printed copy of the message. She read it once, then again. Then she handed it to Lena, who chuckled under her breath. "They blinked," Lena said. "They always blink when they realize you're not bluffing." It wasn't just a win, it was a turning point, because power had tried to silence her and failed. And Jasmine Crockett, she didn't just survive the fire. She made sure they felt the heat. The internet wanted fireworks. The headlines begged for a victory lap. Twitter was ready to see Jasmine Crockett dunk on the Trumps hard. But Jasmine, she had something else in mind. Less than 24 hours after Ivanka Trump's lawyers sent the withdrawal email, Jasmine appeared live on MSNBC. No flashy graphics, no dramatics. Just Jasmine in a navy blazer, seated under soft studio lights, calm, composed, and unshakably clear. The host asked the question everyone expected. "So how does it feel to beat Ivanka Trump?" Jasmine didn't blink. This was never about beating someone, she said. It was about making sure that the next woman who's threatened behind closed doors knows she doesn't have to run. That truth doesn't lose when we refuse to let it. She didn't name names. She didn't mock. She didn't gloat. Instead, she pulled up documents past cease and desist letters other women had received. She spoke about the system, not just Ivanka, about how power works in silence, about how lawsuits are sometimes not about winning in court, but about shutting mouths. And finally, she looked straight into the camera and said, "I didn't fight this for me. I fought it for every little girl watching tonight who might grow up to speak truth to power and needs to know she won't be alone." The host sat in silence. The audience at home sat in silence. And something shifted in the national conversation, because Jasmine Crockett just proved that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it speaks like this. It started with a tweet, just one, a screenshot of Jasmine's MSNBC interview with the caption, "This woman didn't just defend herself, she defended all of us." Within hours, it had 200,000 likes. Within a day, it had reached classrooms, courtrooms, and kitchen tables across America. Teachers wrote in. Law professors shared her clip with students. High school girls posted videos crying, saying they'd never seen a black woman stand up so calmly to power. And then came the letters. Handwritten ones, typed emails. Anonymous notes slid under office doors. From small towns in Nebraska to packed offices in New York City, people were moved. "You reminded me why I became a lawyer. You helped me tell my boss to stop belittling me. You made me believe I can run for office one day." And beyond individuals, organizations began to respond. The ACLU issued a rare public statement. "We stand with Representative Jasmine Crockett. Her courage in the face of intimidation is the very essence of free speech." The National Bar Association applauded her handling of legal threats with unmatched grace and clarity. Even overseas journalists and activists in countries battling censorship shared Jasmine's story as a symbol of modern resistance. And Jasmine, she didn't seek the spotlight, but she accepted the moment. Not as a personal victory, but as proof that one voice, firm, honest, unyielding, can start a ripple that breaks through silence. Not long ago, Jasmine Crockett was just another name on the congressional roster, a first-term representative with limited influence overshadowed by louder voices in Washington. Few outside her district even recognized her face. But that was before the cease and desist letter, before the media storm, before she stood firm in the face of threats that would have silenced most. Now the numbers tell the story. A national poll shows 63% of Americans admire her courage. Among black women over 40, her approval skyrocketed to 81%. Even independents and moderates groups notoriously hard to impress listed her as one of the most authentic voices in Congress today. For the first time, commentators on both conservative and liberal networks admitted something striking. Jasmine Crockett has become more than just a representative. She is now a symbol of defiance, of truth, of resilience. Her image standing tall at a podium, eyes unwavering, voice steady, began circulating everywhere. Posters, social media hashtags, even college dorm walls. In a city where reputations rise and fall overnight, Jasmine's had not only risen, it had solidified. She was no longer the new congresswoman from Texas. She was the woman who would not be silenced. The room was silent, but it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of respect. Cameras focused, pens stopped moving, and for once even her critics leaned in to listen. Jasmine Crockett looked directly into the lens, her voice steady, her words clear. If you believe in justice, you never need to apologize for speaking the truth. The sentence hung in the air like a challenge, like a promise. She continued, do not let your silence be purchased by threats. Do not trade your dignity for their power. Because one day the truth always rises, and when it does, you'll want to be the one who stood with it. Young students in classrooms, activists watching from their phones, even ordinary families sitting in their living rooms, they heard it, and they felt it. This was no longer just a political defense. It was a generational message. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was handing the torch to those who would come after her. And in that moment, millions knew this was history being written live. The headlines had shifted, the legal threats had vanished, but the battle was never truly over. Power never sleeps. It only waits. Jasmine Crockett knew this. She knew that behind closed doors, the same powerful forces were still watching her every move, waiting for her to stumble, waiting for her to fall silent. But now something was different. She was no longer standing alone. Behind her, there was a movement, ordinary citizens, students, activists, teachers, families, people who had seen her fight and found courage in it. And so when a reporter asked her, "What will you do if they come after you again?" Jasmine simply smiled. Her answer was calm, unwavering, unforgettable. "If they come back, it'll still be here telling the truth." The crowd erupted, not with noise, but with something stronger, faith. Faith that one voice, when it refuses to bow, can become a chorus. Jasmine Crockett walked off the stage not just as a congresswoman, but as a symbol, a reminder that the fight for truth is never easy, but always worth it. In the end, Jasmine's story is not just about politics, it's about all of us. It teaches us that silence is the greatest weapon of the powerful, and courage is the only way to break it. No matter how small we feel, no matter how strong the forces against us may seem, speaking the truth can light a fire that spreads far beyond ourselves. Because when one voice refuses to bow, it gives thousands of others permission to rise. If this story moved, you don't let it end here. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of truth seekers. Because every time you subscribe, you're not just following a channel, you're standing with those who refuse to be silenced.